afternoon. Welcome to the news here on 3FM92.7. We're coming to you live from our studio here at John Hammond Street inside at the Sawe Kanda in Accra. Also live on our numerous affiliates across the country. Live on 3news.com as well. Coming up this afternoon, as board of IMF approves a bailout package for Ghana, concerns begin to emerge about government's ability to judiciously apply the funds in a manner that will bring quick relief to the Ghanaian economy. Also this afternoon, opposition National Democratic Congress resolves to back now former MP for Asin North James Jachikwesin to lead the party into the by-election yet to be scheduled by the Electoral Commission after the Supreme Court yesterday annulled the election that took Mr. Kwesin to Parliament. And much later, Asantehene Otumfuo Setutu's vow to visit notorious Galamsey enclaves within his region sparks debate over the role of traditional authorities in dealing with illegal mining as the menace continues despite numerous government interventions.
And I'm not happy with chiefs in Amansia area where Galamsey has taken over the land, and I say to them that if you sit there and you claim that you don't know what is happening, then you are not fit to be a chief over there. And I don't care whose gods it is, because we have to enforce it.
Details of these stories and a lot more if you stay with us for the next 30 minutes. A pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's bulletin, and also in this afternoon's edition we'll be live to the Tema motorway where there's been a gridlock since morning in relation to an accident on that part of the stretch, as well as touch base on the flooding situation in the capital. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. This bulletin is streaming live on Facebook, 3FM927, as well as on Twitter, same handles, 3FM927. Let's begin from the economic front, because concerns are beginning to emerge as to whether government will be able to judiciously use money secured from the IMF to address the immediate needs of the ordinary Ghanaian. The IMF board on Wednesday gave its approval for a bailout package which would see Ghana receive in tranches some $3 billion over a 3-year period. The Ghanaian economy has been in crisis on the back of high public debt and inflation. Government has blamed the economic crunch on ravages of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war, but critics attribute the situation to mismanagement. The Ghana government has been banking its hopes on the bailout package for a quick turnaround in the economic fortunes. Details of the IMF agreement and the conditionality would be announced at a press conference later this afternoon, but here's a wrap on the IMF approval by my colleague based in Washington, D.C., Sani Abdul Rahman.
Well, a smile on the face of Ken Oforiatta and his team for pulling the deal through. I'm so sure the IMF managing director would also be smiling because of her public advocacy to help Ghana secure the loan. The approval of the program, we are learning, allows for an immediate disbursement of the first tranche of $600 million. The IMF Communication Department would release a statement anytime from now, which would be followed by a news conference. This obviously marks an important step for Ghana, but Ken Oforiatta and his team would have to keep a good fiscal posture and provide favorable terms to creditors to avoid any sort of issues or protracted negotiations, looking at the case of Zambia and the rest. The IMF itself has said on its website a while ago that the next step is for the official creditor committee to agree with the Ghanaian authorities the specific modalities of how official creditors intend to deliver debt relief consistent with the fund program parameters. So while the government celebrates this loan approval, it has a lot of work to do in order to keep the program running and ultimately retain investor confidence.
Sani Abdul Rahman is my colleague based in Washington, providing details there. Well, some of you have been reacting to the news of the country securing an IMF bailout. Here is what some Ghanaians have been telling us from the streets of the capital.
Personally, I think that the government knows what they are doing, so definitely they have plans of what they intend to use the money for. What I think it means to the ordinary Ghanaian, I think that, well, we should just believe in our governments. That's what I think. Just trust them and see what the outcome would simply mean. I think it's going to help the economy because we are facing a lot of challenges in different sectors, the health sector, the educational sector. So I think with all these monies or with this bailout, it's going to help in some of these sectors.
For the start, the 600, it's okay, not too much to boost the economy fully, but I think that to some kind of extent it's okay. So let's wait forward to see how the disbursement will be.
It won't benefit me as an individual, because the prices of foodstuff and everything is high. So even though they've gone for the money, they will not decrease the price. It's still the same. So as for me, it won't benefit me. Yeah.
Bosia ya ka ho asem. Wo kwaje bosia eye ka da usu eye ka wo de abre oman no. Wasan ayi mu bi e de to party.
So, a Ghanaian, they're also not entirely enthused. If you go on to social media, though, the conversation has taken quite a different turn. The IMF yesterday announced that it had approved a $3 billion program for Ghana, which will support reforms to address its current economic and financial crisis and help build a better future for all Ghanaians. Well, not many Ghanaians on Twitter particularly are happy with that announcement, and quite a number of you have been reacting there. And this one from Ash Black says that do not say it will help build a better future for Ghanaians. You just send funds into the account of thieving politicians. They're going to use these monies for the next vote buying season. Shame on you, IMF. Then there's another one from Daddy D, says that you guys didn't do any stakeholder engagement with the public before approving these funds. We assure you the money will not be used judiciously. Eriko Ajata Eric says that on the land of gold, diamond, bauxite, oil, cocoa, timber, rich vegetation cover, etc., with just 30 million population. But see us now. Why? I mean why? And so on that Twitter page of the IMF where they announced this $3 billion package, the responses have not been so great. But director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research at the University of Ghana, Professor Peter Korte, he's been shedding some light on some of the conditionality attached to the loan.
It is something that we have signed on to, we have agreed to sign on to. Of course, there will be a freeze on employment. Sometimes they say net freeze on employment, depending on what we will find in the program. But that may come with some painful, lessons for the labor front. But if we're able to grow the private sector, if all these resources and the credibility and all that the IMF program brings on board is used to leverage a growth in the private sector, then the private sector can expand and absorb some of the labor force that otherwise would have been absorbed by the public sector.
That's Professor Peter Korte speaking there. We'll return again to my colleague Sani Abdul Rahman on this particular subject matter and get for you as well some more perspective, particularly to the concerns being raised by some Ghanaians. Also on Twitter, most definitely. That's where a large portion of the concern and the belief that this will amount to nothing has been expressed by many of you Ghanaians. But while we wait to do that, the full weight of the party, including the minority caucus in Parliament, will be put behind Honorable Kwesi so as to ensure an even more resounding victory for him in the upcoming by-election. That's the resolve of the opposition National Democratic Congress to the decision by the Supreme Court in annulling the election which brought Richard Jachi Kwesi into Parliament. The Apex Court, in its ruling, further ordered Parliament to expunge the name of the now former MP from its record. The opposition National Democratic Congress, they've been reacting to that particular ruling by the Supreme Court. They issued a statement yesterday, and I'll just walk you through brief details of that statement and exactly what the position of the party is. And it reads quite simply that they've become aware of the Supreme Court's decision invalidating the nomination election and subsequent swearing in of James Chachi-Kwesi in the light of the many previous decisions, including decisions in cases involving J.H. Mensah, Baba Jamal, and Peter Mewu, that states that the Supreme Court does not have the jurisdiction to invalidate a parliamentary election and that the High Court is where such a matter should be taken. It seems strange to the NDC that the Supreme Court gave this decision. Moreover, there's no doubt that Honorable James Kwesi did not owe allegiance to any other country, whether at the time of his nomination, election, or swearing in. They also look forward to seeing the reasons the court will provide. Then they go on to make that quite conclusive statement that nonetheless, even though there are serious questions about the legitimacy of the decision, after consulting with the Honorable Kwesi, the leadership of the NDC wishes to state unequivocally that they are ready for the by-election that is now the result of the decision. Jonathan Asante-Okyere, he's a political analyst. He joined us on phone for some analysis on this decision by the NDC to stick with James Chachi-Kwesi on the same matter and return with him as a face of Asin North in the yet to be scheduled by-election by the Electoral Commission. He's joined us on phone now, Jonathan Asante-Okyere. Many thanks, Mr. Asante-Okyere, for speaking to us this afternoon. So, bringing back the same candidate for a possible by-election, some would say it's a big gamble.
I don't know, I'm not yeah. Can I get your question?
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm asking if this resolve by the NDC is not a big gamble to present James Chachi-Kwesi again as a face of the party in the Asin North constituency for a yet to be scheduled by-election.
Okay. Let me say good afternoon to our listeners. I think that the NDC cannot present any other candidate better than Chachi-Kwesi. Now, the point is that all what they have to do is to explain the issues clearly to them. And that in itself will make the Supreme Court, the government of the day, look evil and monstrous. And that is the only thing they have to do on the ground, because they also have to consider the sacrifices Chachi has made. What are these sacrifices? Of course, he renounced his citizenship as a Canadian citizen to come and serve his people in his full capacity. So the process had already begun. And unfortunately, we have a Supreme Court that, for me, if you ask me, motivated politically to take such a decision, because I've asked myself several questions. Unless maybe if you are asking me questions about that judgment, then I can equally give you my view on that. But as you asked, I think that the best candidate that they can present is Chachi-Kwesi. Once the law does not prescribe him from contesting, that's the best candidate. He's going to have sympathy votes. The Supreme Court could be painted with all the brush that they need to brush them with, whichever form. But it will come at a cost. And that is the only disadvantage that the NDC as a party is going to have, because there isn't anything like a by-election that you are not going to spend. So the sympathy vote will come. The Supreme Court should be painted with all the brush that they can use to paint. The government will look monstrous. The economy is so bad that they still have every leverage that they can use to win the by-election.
And so for you, he remains the NDC's best bet to win a possible by-election. He's been consulted. That's the indication we get from the statement as well. But the NDC as a party continues to make the argument that they do not agree with the initial decision of the Supreme Court. Some will say that it's the NDC. They shouldn't agree with the Supreme Court if it's going against them.
Certainly. If we need to interrogate what, that article particularly means, it is sometimes, I keep saying, law is nothing but a mere application of common sense. If that article seeks to suggest that since you are a dual citizen, you are holding a certain allegiance, and that you should make sure that before you become this, you should have renounced that. So I began asking myself questions. The Supreme Court has interpreted that to mean that by the time that you go and pick your nomination for the process, the Electoral Commission has started that process, you should show your certificate. Now, ask yourself, show your certificate as what? As an MP? What would have happened if a person declined to continue the process? Would the law be interested in that? That is a question we must ask. Does filing a nomination indicate that one is an MP or one has become an MP? Would the law have been interested if the man had lost the election? So, if all these questions, the Supreme Court cannot prefer intelligible answer to this, then I think that they have erred. They have erred grievously. And I think that the only reason I can prefer, or the only thing I can suggest to have been the motivation, is political. Right. Because it just does not make any common sense to me. What is the meaning of allegiance if you are not even a secret agent?
Right.
Or an FBI official, for that matter, for which reason you are going to? Just an ordinary citizen. And you have made a voodoo out of this. I think that this country will need cleansing.
Right then, Mr. Asante-Okyere, I appreciate that you could speak to us this afternoon.
Okay.
That's Jonathan Asante-Okyere. He is a political analyst speaking to us this afternoon. And we're going to stay on the subject of by-elections because the Electoral Commission says that but for its swift intervention, there would have been chaos after a last-minute filing by one of the two independent candidates who bore the same name of the 2020 independent parliamentary candidate Kwaku Duah. The new candidate, who was also called Kwaku Duah after failing to change his party logo, was given one by the EC. William Evans Inkum has been speaking with Benjamin Bano Piohusi, Electoral Commission Regional Director. He's joined us on phone. Evans, exactly what has the EC been telling you about a possible chaos in the Kumewu constituency?
Well, so there was this last-minute candidate who filed for the election, and he also, he bore the same name, just like the 2020 independent candidate, Kwaku Duah. And he was coming in with the same party logo, but the EC said no, that would have created some level of chaos because the 2020 independent candidate, Kwaku Duah, logo is known to the EC. So if you are not coming in with a new logo, then the EC will have no other option than to provide a new one for him. So he was given a grace period for him to provide a new logo, but that wasn't coming, and the EC was compelled to give him a new logo that will be different from what Kwaku Duah, the 2020 candidate, has been using. Interestingly, Kwaku Duah, the 2020 candidate, occupies the third position on the ballot paper. The new candidate, who also, bears the same name, Kwaku Duah, occupies the fourth position. But this is what Bano Bio has been telling me.
And Evans, we'll hear from him pretty shortly or much later in the course of the bulletin, but many thanks for speaking to us. That's William Evans Inkum. He's my colleague in the Ashanti region, providing a lot more details from exactly what the Electoral Commission has been saying. He's in the Ashanti region and will stay there because the Asante Hene Otumfuo said to he's vowed to use his chiefs as scapegoats in the fight against illegal mining. He has announced for the first time a tour of Galamsey endemic areas like the Amansia West Enclave, and this, he says, will determine his next line of action. According to him, he will visit all notorious Galamsey enclaves. He was speaking at a Green Ghana event in the Ashanti region.
It is very sad that despite the several measures government has been putting in place to curb this menace, illegal logging and illegal mining continue to pose a threat to our forests. It means that government cannot do it alone. We must all get involved and support government to come to grips with these matters. My chiefs know that I've been speaking about this, and I'm not happy with chiefs in Amansia area where Galamsey has taken over the land, and I say to them that if you sit there and you claim that you don't know what is happening, then you are not fit to be a chief over there. So these are matters that we are going to take it up again. And I don't care whose goals it is, because we have to enforce it. And I have to start with my chiefs first, and then government has to deal with the other ones. We all have to take matters seriously to be able to bring this to a closure, because I cannot accept that. I'm going to take a drive around those areas, in the Amansia to Mansum Kwanta area and all those things to see. I've gotten reports about what is happening, and I'm going to do that. And if I finish with that, all the chiefs around that area may have to answer as to why that has happened. I was alarmed to hear during the minister's press briefing a couple of weeks ago that forest reserves in the Bekwai Forest District, including the Oda River, Subin Shelter Belt, and Apampram Forest Reserves, are the most difficult reserves to control due to activities of gun-wielding illegal miners and loggers. This cannot continue. I have therefore charged the chiefs in these areas to work with the Forestry Commission and the Ministry to find ways of ridding these forests of the illegal miners and loggers.
That's Asante Otumfuo Osei the second speaking there, and let's get on the telephone line now. Awula Sewa is the coordinator of environmental NGO Eco-Conscious Citizens. She's joined us on the telephone line for a lot more. Fresh anger and decision to tour, some say a bit delayed. How long? The argument is, how long has the Otumfuo known this and yet hasn't taken these steps to help deal with illegal mining?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Well, it's always better late than never. The situation is dire. It's getting worse every day. So it's better late than never. What I would say is that the activists on the ground have been calling attention on the criminal activity going on. For example, in Atina, in Punwa, illegal mining is going on with impunity. The Ofin River is being polluted as we speak. And I think, was it last year, we reported on it, and one of the activists was actually arrested instead of the illegal miners. So if the Asante Hini is going to take action, we think even if it's long overdue, it's a step in the right direction. What we would ask for is a number to be made available so that anybody who sees illegal mining going on can call that number and prompt action will be taken. Because as it says, the activists feel helpless. The illegal mining is going on with impunity, and it seems like nothing is happening to stop it.
As if nothing is happening to step in, how much of a deterrent will even just the threat to take action serve on some of these individuals and areas where this has been ongoing actively?
I don't think the threat is sufficient. We need action. The chiefs who are supervising this devastation of our country should be distilled. The DCE, the MP, the assemblyman or men in the area, if they are dealt with, then the message will spread loud and clear that we are actually serious about stopping the menace of criminal illegal mining. What is going on is that our security is at risk. If we continue this way, we'll become extinct. You cannot pollute all your land and rivers and not expect to have birth defects, kidney disease. Already people are dying by falling to the pit. Our food security is something we should be concerned about because the land is being poisoned. The fishes we eat, do we know where they are coming from? It's a clear and present danger. So we don't want threats. What we actually want is action being taken, chiefs being distilled, high players being prosecuted and convicted and imprisoned. Then will be people get to know that we are serious about the scourge of illegal mining.
Right, Senator, I appreciate that you could speak to us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
That's Awula Sewa. She's the coordinator of Eco-Conscious Citizens, an environmental NGO, this afternoon, speaking to us on the threats by the Asante Hene Otumfuo Osei. We're staying with him because culture and traditional historian Safo Kantanka has described the Asante Hene's call for the return of golden artifacts from the United Kingdom as appropriate. He says the artifacts have economic, religious, and academic values for Ghana, especially the Ashantis. My colleague William Evansinkum has a lot more in this report.
The Asante Hene Otumfuo Osei II has held talks with the British Museum in respect of the return of collection of golden artifacts presently in their possession. The Third Anglo-Ashanti War spanned from 1873 to 1874. The end of the war marked the last time these artifacts were ever seen.
The Second Wesley War, that was 1874, between the Ashantis and the British. That was one very serious war which brought about the burning down of Kumasi and looting such items, the artifacts.
They are now sighted in some museums in the UK.
It's very necessary to negotiate for all these items because it's in their hands and in their country. You can't go and retrieve them by force. It is through negotiation that you can get your items back.
To Safo Kantanka, these artifacts have enormous economic value. To him, the argument that they are better preserved in the UK is a flawed one. William Evans Inkum.
There, Evans providing details in that report for you. You're listening to the news here on 3FM92.7, and all throughout the morning, the rains have just not let down in the capital, Accra, as it's been raining, and there's a gridlock situation on the Tema motorway as a result of this. And my colleague Martin Egbeta, he's at the Tema motorway area. He will be joining us on phone to provide a lot more details as to exactly what the situation is. Then we'll touch base at Odo here near Circle, where residents there are expressing fear of possible flooding as a result of the rains since the morning. Martin Egbeta, he is in the Tema area where there's been a gridlock at the Tema motorway since as early as 6 a.m. this morning in relation to happenings there. He's joined us on the telephone line with some more details as to exactly what's happening. Martin, you have been stuck in traffic as well for God knows how long. Exactly what's the situation?
Well, Mawuena, it's we know that the road that connects Accra to Aflao, which is more like the eastern part of the Volta region, is a very major commercial route. Unfortunately, today's rain has intensified the traffic that already, bedevils this particular stretch. And the other difficulty is that the mini constructions being undertaken on the road has slowed down traffic even further. There was a particular bridge that was overtaken by water, overflooded. That is what caused today's excessively slow movement of cars. We also saw that a number of the cars had actually parked and drivers had gotten out into sheds. Although it's raining, the few who were in their cars were just, sat there, no action, no activity. We didn't see any police officer or anybody who could come to give any form of assistance. So it was quite a challenge. And I saw some cars turning around, going in the opposite direction. So they slow down by you. You ask what's the reason, why is the traffic up front? They just tell you that, well, I don't know, but I think that I'm wasting my fuel. So because of that, I'm going back home. So it's been a very difficult day today. And I'm sure that it's not just this part. So around the Tombaria, for instance, because there are other heavy vehicles also use that place, due to the commercial activity that goes on there, they've also, been part of the traffic situation. It's been a very difficult 4-5 hours. Vehicles are moving at snail pace, and we don't know when assistance is going to come to try and ease the traffic.
Right then, Martin, providing details from the Tema motorway area. Let's return to Odona here at Circle, and my colleague Enyonam Haligan is there as well, because all activities around the area has grinded to a halt as residents they anticipate the worst with rains throughout the morning. Enyonam, you've been interacting with some of them. Exactly what have they been telling you?
So far, the situation is being managed, but could get worse as time goes on. It was noted that some illegal residents along the drain still dump rubbish into the gutter, which is causing such issues, and then the drains don't properly move freely. Yeah.
But does it look like the place is beginning to flood because it's a flood-prone area?
Yes, the house I'm currently standing in is flooded. Yes. So yeah.
Right then, Enyonam Haliga, my colleague, providing details there for us. We end with the Ghana Institute of Architecture because they have set up four separate ad hoc committees to investigate the collapsing of buildings across the country in the last few weeks. President of the institute has been speaking to 3FM.
And the committee will comprise of representatives from the various professional bodies that's in the built environment. So there will be an architect from Ghana Institute of Architects. There will be a structural engineer from Ghana Institute of Engineering. There will be a geotechnical engineer from Ghana Institute of Engineering. There will be a representative from Ghana Institute of Surveyors and a planner from Ghana Institute of Planning. So
that's architect Foster Osei Akono, is the president of the Ghana Institute of Architecture, speaking there. And that's it for this afternoon's edition of the Bulletin. Later at 2 p.m. there will be a joint press conference from the IMF and Ghanaian government officials following the $3 billion approval to us here in the country. Do stay tuned here on 3FM92.7 as well on 3news.com for all of the details. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. A pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's Bulletin. The business team is next.
This is Business Daily. Coming up, IMF indicates that successful implementation of program depends on Ghana's ability to negotiate debt restructuring agreements with its external creditors. Meanwhile, economists warns Ghanaians to prepare for tougher economic times as Ghana secures IMF deal. Plus, Pensioner Bondholders Forum gives government a May 19 ultimatum to settle all outstanding coupon payments of its members or face their wrath. My name is Michael Obodu. Straight into our stories now, as the International Monetary Fund IMF says a successful implementation of its program will largely depend on Ghana's ability to negotiate debt restructuring agreements with its external creditors. This follows the IMF board approval of a $3 billion bailout program, which will provide balance of payment support and policy credibility. There's more in this news desk report.
The Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund approved Ghana's $3 billion extended credit facility, which will provide balance of payment support and give policy credibility. The decision will enable the immediate disbursement of some $600 million. Now, according to the statement issued by the IMF, the program aims at restoring macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability and includes a wide range of reforms to build resilience and lay the foundation for stronger and more inclusive growth. Now, according to the statement, Ghana's ability to secure debt restructuring agreements with its external creditors will be essential for the successful implementation of the new extended credit facility arrangement. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva in a statement said a core element of the program is fiscal consolidation. This will be achieved through enhanced revenue and streamlining of expenditure with policies to protect the vulnerable and create room for more social spending. A press conference is scheduled for later today between government and IMF officials on the program.
My colleague Pakwesi Asare there with that news desk report. Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund boss, Kristalina Georgieva, has congratulated Ghana on its $3 billion IMF-supported program approved by the Bretton Woods Institution's Executive Board. She noted in her message that the IMF stands with Ghana as it implements reforms to address the current economic and financial crisis and will help build a better future for all Ghanaians.
Congratulations to Ghana for a strong program of reforms to revitalize growth and reduce the country's debt burden. I'm very pleased that the IMF Executive Board has approved today a 3-year, $3 billion support for this program. We are proud to be partners with Ghana in addressing the difficult economic and financial conditions the country is facing. Today's decision is also a major milestone for the G20 Common Framework. The commitment by the Official Creditors Committee to help make Ghana's debt sustainable was essential for the approval of the funds program, and it signals important progress in the G20 Common Framework. The decision our board has taken is the beginning of the work we will do together with the authorities of Ghana for the implementation of the program for the benefit of the people of Ghana.
You heard the IMF boss, Kestelina Georgieva. Meanwhile, an economist with the University of Cape Coast Business School, Professor John Gachi, is warning of tougher times ahead even as Ghana prepares to receive the first tranche of $600 million this week. Reacting to the IMF board approval of Ghana's extended credit facility, Professor Gachi urged Ghanaians to prepare themselves for very challenging economic times associated with such IMF programs.
That is generally a good news for the economy because Ghana has been waiting for this, struggling through, doing a lot of diplomatic engagement. Now that it is approved, I think the government will be happy about that. But that is the beginning of mis-expression by this engagement. One, we are going to now experience freeze unemployment. We are now going to pay economic prices for utilities and services delivered by government, and we are also going to see more revenue and tax measures coming on board until the program ends. So those are the feelings that will be expressed with this approval of the program.
Professor John Gachi is an economist with the University of Cape Coast Business School. Now, in a related development, the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Mark Bedu Abuaji, is hopeful Ghanaians may possibly see a much improved macroeconomic environment as the country closes its deal with the IMF. My colleague Menu Afo has come through with the following report.
For a long time, businesses have been lamenting the high cost of operations in the country due to unfavorable economic conditions. While inflation rates soared from about 13.9% in January last year to 54.1% by December in the same year, 2022. The rate has since gone down to 41.2% according to the April statistics this year, but it is not directly felt in the pockets, as it just means that prices of goods are still going up, but at a slower rate than it used to.
News about Ghana receiving the first tranche of $3 billion IMF deal this week seems to have excited industry players, and they are hopeful for better macroeconomic conditions. Joseph Obing is president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association.
If the actual money comes, it may mean therefore that the city is going to gain some strength. And if it does so, it means that we are going to get the forest at a cheaper price, what will trickle down on the cost of doing business.
Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mark Bedu Abuaji, has also reiterated the concerns of GUTA and assures businesses will respond positively and reduce prices if economic factors work in their favor.
We are likely to see inflation coming down, even though we've seen some positive signs. We hope also that the central bank will follow suit, looking at the trend of reduction in inflation and also stability in exchange rate to reduce the policy rate. The reduction in prices may not be immediate, but when we see the positive signs of inflation coming down, of the CD putting up a strong performance, and also interest rates coming down,
My colleague Menu Afo came through with that report. And away from that, the Pensioner Bondholders Forum has given government a May 19 ultimatum to settle all outstanding coupon payments of its members or face their wrath. Speaking to 3 Business, the convener of the group, Dr. Edu Anani Entry, lamented that not a single member of the group has received payments despite the promises made to them during their last picketing. He added that members of the group will return to picketing at the Finance Ministry if their concerns are not addressed.
Yes, I sent a letter to the ministry. Apart from the press release that we
issue, we have sent a letter to the ministry and stated clearly that these 3 points, paying all the outstanding coupons this week, then paying the coupons that will be matured subsequently on time, as and when they are due. And then we concluding agreement with the government or the ministry on the payment of the outstanding principals. 3 principals now outstanding. We say we're written that this week, by 19th of May, which is Friday, we should conclude that discussion. Give this 1 week as a goodwill gesture for government to do what it should do. And if we don't get the results, we go back to the default situation, which is the picketing.
That was the voice of Dr. Edu Anani Entry, who is the convener of the Pensioner Bond Holders Forum. And that'll be all for Business Daily. For more stories, please visit our website, 3news.com. My name is Michael Obodu. Thank you for listening. As always, please stay safe.